In the last section, we installed the PM2 Process Manager on our local machine. This is a cluster management solution, so it has everything having to do with spawning multiple instances of your application and managing the health of every single one of them. So this PM2 module that we just installed is going to do really fancy things, like say if one of your instances ever crashes, it's going to automatically restart it for you. As I was gushing about it in the last video, it really is a pretty nice piece of software, very widely used in production deployments. So in this section, we're just going to get a little bit more familiar with how it works. Before we actually try it out, however, recall that inside of our index.js file right now, we still have a lot of stuff in here related to setting up clustering ourselves. So we don't really want to use PM2 on top of an existing cluster thing right here. So we're going to do a little bit of cleanup inside this file. If you want to back up the contents of this thing right here, feel free to make a duplicate of this file because we are going to delete a lot of the clustering related stuff inside of here. So essentially, I'm going to go all the way down to the else statement right here, right about here or so, and I'm going to delete everything above it related to clustering. I'll then go down to the very bottom of the file where we had the closing curly brace for our else statement, and I'm going to delete that as well. And I'm going to dedent this thing, outdent I guess, and I'll save the file. So now we're back to the case where we're not doing anything with trying to set up clustering or anything like that. We're just going to delegate all that behavior over to PM2. Okay, so now we are back to normal here. I'm going to go back over to my terminal, and I'm going to make sure I'm still inside of my project directory. I'm also going to make sure that I don't have my server running right now. So I'm not running my server in any other window, because if I am, I will see an error message when I try to start up my server. Okay, so to start up our application using PM2 in cluster mode, we're going to write out PM2 start index.js, and then we're going to pass in -i right here with a number. So the reason we're doing -i right here, and we don't always have to do this, is just because we just had a huge discussion about the number of workers that we have inside of our cluster. The -i right here is not quite so much the number of instances. It's a little bit more about figuring out, it's about letting PM2 decide how many instances to create for you. So a very common option to use here is 0. 0 says, hey, you know what, PM2, I don't know what to do here. Just figure out what to do for me. In that case, if you put in 0 right here, PM2 is going to set up a number of instances equal to the number of logical CPU cores on your computer. Now, I realized in the last section, I mentioned logical cores very briefly without really going into that. The difference between physical cores and logical cores in your CPU comes down to that topic of multi-threading or hyper-threading. So my computer is a dual-core machine, has 2 physical cores, but each core can process 2 threads at the same time. So 2 threads at a time times 2 cores equals 4 logical cores. So logical cores is the number of physical times the number of threads that they can process at any given point in time. So to figure out how many logical cores, if you pass in i-i0 right here, it will start up a number equal to the number of actual logical cores on your machine. Now you'll see that I've already started up my cluster here and I completely forgot about it. So I'm going to kill that one. And I'm going to start it up again, this time with -i0. And so you're going to see that PM2 clearly thinks I have 4 logical cores on my machine, and so it started up 4 separate instances of my application. Now you'll notice that this dumps me back at like the command line right here, but there's a couple of different commands that we can use to inspect these running instances that we have and do things like, say, pull logs from them or other things that you might want to do in a normal application. So first off, you can get a very quick summary of the health of all your running instances by running PM2 list, and this will print out that very short summary, little table that shows you kind of like what's going on with your current cluster. We can also do PM2 show, and then the name of one of our instances over here, or the name of one of our applications. So my application name is index, and chances are yours is as well. So if I do PM2 show index, I then get some much more detailed information about everything that's going on in that set of children. I can also do PM2 monit. So not monitor, just monit. And when I run that one, it gives me this really cool little dashboard where I can scroll through all the different processes over here. To scroll through this list right here, use your up and down arrow keys. And then to actually go over here and inspect any logs that are being emitted by these different processes, you can do the right arrow over and then scroll through those. But in our case, we don't have any logs right now. So in general, you can use this thing just in a production environment, and it's going to take care of managing the health of every single one of your instances. So if one of these children end up crashing, no problem, PM2 is going to automatically restart it for you. To exit this dashboard right here, by the way, you can press Control-C. And then the very last thing that you probably want to know how to do is how to stop those running servers. So to stop that group of running children, we can do PM2, delete index, like so. And when we run delete, you'll see that it removes all those running children, and we're back to running nothing at all. Now, to be clear, usually we use PM2 in production environments. So you will log on to some remote server through SSH or whatever deployment process you have, and then you can interact with PM2 in that fashion. But PM2 has a lot of other ways to get access to your remote servers and interface them, all inside that documentation I showed you just a little bit ago. So usually you're not going to quite use PM2 so much in a development environment beyond just to kind of start it up and say, okay, yeah, looks like my application works and it's not doing anything funny. All right, so that's pretty much clustering in a nutshell. So we've seen some good examples of clustering. We also saw where it starts to fall down and where we might want to get that sweet spot on the number of children that we have available. Let's take a quick pause right here. In the next video, we're going to come back and we're going to start looking at worker threads for delegating work inside of our application. So quick break, and I'll see you in just a minute.